Hey, and welcome to episode 167 of Meeple to Meeple. Today, I'm diving into a tabletop project that has been years in the making, one that's aiming to carve out its own space between tabletop RPGs and traditional board game experiences. I'm joined today by Ryan Fawcett, the designer of Storyteller, March of the Dam, a cooperative fantasy adventure that blends classic pixelated dungeon crawling with a guided narrative experience. This is a project that is completely fueled by passion, persistence, and more importantly, a clear vision of what tabletop storytelling can be. And today, we're going to unpack the journey behind it, the design philosophy, and what it's like launching a game into the wild on Kickstarter. So the question is, what is your story going to be? Ryan, thanks for joining. How are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. I'm doing really well and very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited. This is interesting because I don't think I've covered a designer of a not board game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've played a lot of tabletop role-playing games in my day. I've played a lot of video games, so I'm not a stranger to them, but I don't think I've covered. I'm trying to think. Someone out there is gonna be like, "Oh yeah, well in episode 103, but I don't think so. So this is uncharted territory for me.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, it is a bit of it's really a fusion, isn't it? It's got a board, it's a game. So the tagline I had for it for such a long time and still do occasionally is a pixel art role playing board game. So it kind of hits that niche, I think, between the spaces of just components and board and then tabletop role playing. So yeah, taking some heavy inspiration from the
Yeah,
TTRPG scene for sure.
absolutely. Well, let me ask you this question. What was the game that got you into the modern board game hunt?
It's probably going to be, this might be just the worst answer ever. It's like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Vanilla. It's Pandemic. That really got me
Okay.
into the I would say the current scene
Okay.
because it's just awesome. I saw, who was it now, on Geek and Sundry, the YouTube channel they did. I think this is just called Tabletop. I've not watched it in years.
Yeah.
They did videos of loads of tabletop games, and I'm sure they played they either played the legacy version or Pandemic, and I was like, that looks awesome, I'm buying it. So I bought it, and that was it.
Yeah. So do you still gravitate towards cooperative games in your
Absolutely, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's cooperative's always been my thing, right? So even when it comes to video games and all that kind of stuff, I always prefer to play something that is a teamwork based thing. Even just in life in general, I much prefer to work with people than against people. I work in a competitive environment, and we are the least competitive people you could ever imagine. We work together really, really well and look after each other because that's what being good people's all about, right?
That's it. No,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
That's what life's about.
No, you are, man,
We're going straight
you
in
are
deep.
you are preaching to the choir. I have been trying to say that. It's like, we just have to be kind to one another,
Yeah.
share this passion together, and build that positive community.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in a lot of ways, this not only this episode, but all my podcasts it's kind of like I recognize some of my own failures, and so I'm like, this is my mea culpa, my apology to the world. I'm trying to nurture that more, and personally, I love cooperative games, so
Oh, brilliant.
I love co-ops, which we've learned is a rather heated genre. Not everybody loves cooperative games.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like to try and make a fight out of something. I was asked when partnering with, I used Launch Boom. I don't know if you've heard of them. Partnered with Launch Boom to launch this game, and a lot of their literature is like, "How do you do this? How do you win? How do you lose?" And it's like, well, I don't know you don't beat people. Like you play with each other.
Right. Right.
The language is all kind of geared to, oh well, I win the game by doing this. And yes, there's obviously win conditions and lose conditions to a cooperative game, but it's like it doesn't sit right with me to just fight your friends and stuff.
Right.
Play like obviously there's a place for that. We love things like Ticket to Ride and stuff where there's the competitive element, obviously. But I certainly much prefer the cooperative ones. I feel like what's the point in fighting over stuff? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
No,
yeah.
I know exactly what you mean, and I completely agree. So, how do you, because I know that your game is cooperative in
Yes.
nature, how do you tackle the challenge that all cooperative games challenges, where you end up with a quarterback or a table captain, where someone basically tells you what to do? And because I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest reason people don't like cooperative games is because someone just basically tells you what to do, and it's like I don't even need to be here.
Yes.
How have you managed to avoid that or address that phenomenon in your game?
It's a really, really interesting question, actually, and one that there's probably quite a detailed answer to.
Good. Lay it
So
on me.
basically, the the way that the game works for 99.9% of people is you have a particular role. So there's three characters, and each one has a particular role. So the assassin does damage, the fighter takes the damage, and the mage does damage and heals. So it kind of meets right in the middle. So because they have quite strict roles that work really well and synergize together, you're almost incentivized to work together and not just be the quarterback, like you say. However, there is a very small subset of people, my friends, a couple of them, who seem to find ways to break the game. And it's not like they're not doing it on purpose to be horrible. It's just like they found like a hyper efficient way that kind of bends the sort of that space between rules where it
Sure.
might be there's a little bit of we could maybe interpret it that way, and so they use that, and we had one of these on live stream the other day where he kind of bent some rules a little bit, and I didn't correct because I'm not going to be there to correct it for the people who are playing it when they're at home. So I was sat there thinking, this is really interesting. How do I get around it? I thought, well, I don't think I'm going to fix it at all because he's one of the 1%. And there's always going to, they're the types of people who go on Reddit and will say, look at this thing that I found. It's so amazing. Please use it. It's broken as hell, whatever. Totally fine with that because you can't stop people having fun with the game however they want to have fun.
True. That is true. That is
So
so true.
I've kind of navigated that by incentivizing correct play rather than penalizing incorrect play, if that makes sense. Like you can't play this way and it'll kill you if you do. It's just like, just have fun, guys. That's the bottom line. Just have fun.
So I guess I kind of jumped ahead to this challenge facing you, but I guess we should back up and provide the listeners with some context. Let's just talk about Storyteller. Give me a little bit more about the game, the intro to the game itself.
So the intro to the game itself would be, well, it's a pixel art role playing board game. So the kind of idea behind it came from my struggles to introduce friends and family to Dungeons and Dragons. So I wanted to play D&D myself for a very long time and bought the starter set. I got it at a bargain. It was like 20 quid when it was brand new. And at that time, the price was like £35. And I got it for 20 at this game show. I thought, excellent, we're going to D&D our way forever now. And so I invited my youngest sisters up to play. They live in London. So they came up to where I lived with friends and we really struggled our way through a game. After about 40 minutes, it was just like, this was rubbish.
No.
Exactly. And it was just so frustrating because they obviously they come all that way, not specifically to play D&D, but
Right.
yeah, to see us. And so it was kind of frustrating to just sit there and be like, this really doesn't work. So this really was just made to kind of bridge that gap. And kind of that's what it's done. So we play it quite a lot for fun, not just for sort of testing purposes. Sorry, I've got a dog distracting me. She really wants attention.
Fine.
I know, yeah. It's like first time I do anything like this, and she's like, "Oh, please, can I
Yeah,
have some attention? Like, I'm giving you
of
attention."
course. So you had mentioned there's three characters in the game. Talk to me about player count. Is it a 3-player game then? 1 to 3, or is it
It's a 4-player. It's a
4-player?
4-player game.
Okay.
The idea of the dungeon master is the storyteller.
Okay. So you were saying there's three characters.
Yes. So we have three characters, the fighter, the assassin, and the mage. And yeah, basically they have these really sort of predefined roles. So I think that what you find is a lot of people kind of gravitate towards one and will use those quite specifically, really.
And the fourth one, obviously, is the storyteller.
Yes. So the fourth one being the storyteller they're meant to be like the dungeon master. So when I first started designing the game, I used to describe it as like a gateway drug to D&D. The kind of way, yeah. So it was like, how would you describe your board game? And I wasn't talking to anyone professionally. It was just friends. So it was, I said, suppose you could call it a gateway drug to D&D. And they were like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Because that's all it is. It's like a really condensed but simplified version where it still feels like a tabletop role-playing game. So you're like concentrating on leveling up and really kind of building your character out. And then the storyteller, depending on levels of experience, some players actually don't need the storyteller because they're familiar with all of the different things a storyteller can do. So they just kind of automate that process a little bit more and take it in turns, say, reading cards and stuff like that. So it's quite an intuitive, or at least I think it is, and other
Right.
people do too. It's a fairly intuitive sort of system where you read off a card, you do the thing, and then you move on. So it's all kind of self-contained but explanatory rather than having to sort of flip through long rule
Right.
books.
So what if you have less than 4 players?
So if you have less than 4 players, there's a lot of different ways you can enjoy the game. So I've got a friend who is playing it as what we've coined as true solo. So they are by themselves. They play both the storyteller and the single adventurer. And
Okay,
basically,
interesting.
yeah, it's really hard
I can imagine.
because it's designed for everyone to synergize together, but it's still possible to play as a true solo. So he's doing that at the minute, and he is finding it tricky. Obviously, it was designed for more than one, but you can play as a solo player. As a solo player, you can also control, say, 2 adventurers and the storyteller, or you could do all 3 if you wanted. It's just like playing chess with yourself. You just take it in turns to try and
Right.
beat yourself. It's just,
Right.
it's fairly straightforward. And because everything's on cards, you can just kind of play it. The storyteller's role doesn't really, it's not like D&D where you're sort of deciding who to attack and what ability you're going to use. And I'm going to try and take out the mage because I know that they're the healer. It's dictated that who gets attacked is dictated by a threat system. So as an adventurer, if you attack an enemy, that enemy then has to attack you. Or then there's different ways to manipulate that as well. So the storyteller doesn't get to kind of bully one person and you could sort of fake it. It's all sort of automated in a way.
Okay. So if you're, because you had mentioned there is a board, right?
Yeah. So you move around the board.
Okay.
I should have prepared myself and had a copy in front of me. They're all on the
It's
shelf behind me.
fine.
Yeah. So there's a board that you move around and it's divided into 3. So you've got 3 boards. They're all the same size, but they have different amount of spaces on. So chapter 1 is quite easy. You've got 3 spaces to move from the story, like the town that you sort of live in, to fight the boss at the end. You then go from the beginning to the middle to the end,
Okay.
like any good story. But yeah, you move one space at a time and beat the boss on the way to getting to the end.
So if you move into a space or a room or something, how does it populate enemies or monsters or whatever terms?
So these, when you move a space, you go, you've got different counters. So these counters are either combat or exploration. So an exploration encounter is no combat at all. You're not going to get dead on one of those. It's usually a little bit of like a riddle or some kind of just further context to the world. So one of my favorite ones is you come across a battlefield that's littered with dead bodies, basically. And you can choose to either loot the dead or bury the dead. And so no spoilers, but you get different rewards depending on what you do. And that's an exploration. If you go to a combat, it's a bit of text, kind of like a tell your own storybook. So you draw a card and then the storyteller reads the combat and says, you come across some stuff and then you're fighting these enemies. But it's all sort of story based, hence the name.
Right.
That's kind of the name of the game, Storyteller. So as you draw these cards, you're telling your story as you move through the world. And that's kind of how the whole thing comes together at the end. You're like, oh, how cool was it when we went to the, the marsh fields and killed those bog zombies? Oh yeah, and you nearly died to a toxic bite. Yeah, it's that kind of sort of stuff.
Yes, I love those moments. So
Yeah,
is there, in terms of the mechanics of the game, I'm assuming that there are two kind of event decks, one flex for the exploration and one for the combat
that
that
is exactly
determines it?
correct.
Yeah. Okay. All
That's
right.
kind of it. It's just so, a lot of it is almost too straightforward. And I've had to have this real kind of balance between overcomplicating it and undercomplicating it.
Sure.
So when I first designed the game, man, we are going 10 years back. When you said in the intro, it's been years in the making, I was like, years in the making. This game is older than most of my children. So that, yeah, when I first started making it, there was a lot more to it. There was like a combat grid, like a 5x5 grid, and the board, and minis, and loads of different enemies. And there was just loads of these components. And every time I went to play it, if one change happened, it just felt so overwhelming. The numbers were all bigger, so everything had like thousands of hit points. You would earn 10,000 experience because I was modeling it off D&D, which in the rulebook
Sure.
says 10,000. And so I was like, nah, this isn't working. And I was very, very fortunate at one point to have a friend play who was, if I get this term wrong, she might crucify me, dyspraxic, I think, where you're not, no, that's something totally different. Dyscalculia, where they don't do numbers very well. So it's like
Yes.
dyslexia is words, dyscalculia is
Yes.
numbers. Yeah.
Yes. I just learned about that a few months ago. I really wish I could remember what episode it was, but I had my guest Cassidy Ford on. She talked about, she was very open about her Tourette syndrome. And she
Oh, yeah.
talked, but as a part of Tourette, she also has dyscalculia. And I had never heard that before. I was
Yeah. Yeah.
familiar with dyslexia. So, yeah, that could be a problem if you're trying to play this game.
And if you're trying to do big numbers like 10,000 minus 540, yeah. She was like, Ryan, seriously, you need to do something about these numbers because, well, what the hell? I was like, right, okay. So we simplified everything to like basically single or sometimes tens, very rarely into the hundreds, and everything's done. So the hit points and the defense counters, they're like done in 10, 5, and 1. So you're minusing 1 at a time or 5 at a time, or like sometimes you might do an odd 17 or something like that. But because it's counters that you can take away, it's like you can actually count them away rather
Mhm.
than before it was all on the pencil and paper. So you had to like do sums, and she was just like, this is all too much. And because of her, literally, that she sort of redefined how leveling up and combat and hit points and everything worked. I was going through this on live stream just yesterday to a fan who I showed him some of the old cards, and it was like plus 240 attack. And it's like, why did I ever think that was a good idea?
That it is madness. You're absolutely right. So talk to me about like the narrative of the story. Because I'm interested in the replayability, right? Obviously, in the first chapter or scene, I'm going to do these three beginning, middle, and end and fight a boss, right? So I'm assuming it's the same boss every time you play. How is that? How much replayability is there?
So it really depends on how
Okay.
you play games, really. So currently, the way that it works is you have the beginning, the middle, and the end. So generally, we play it one chapter at a time. So we'll do like a 2 or 3 hour session, beat the beginning, put it away for a couple of weeks, then do the middle, and then do the end. And the way that it works is you've got a story card. So there's 3 beginnings, 3 middles, and 3 ends to choose from. And they're all sort of like an anthology basis. So you've got the beginning doesn't link to the middle, doesn't link to the end. You're sort of telling your story as you go. So the beginning might be you're stuck in a desert town and you have to hunt zombies for money. And that's your first sort of quest. And then your combat and exploration decks, there's about 20 encounters in each. And then with the exploration, there's 2 or 3 choices for most of those. So you can replay that a bunch of times. And then the combat, you generally would only do 9, 10 maybe combats per run through. And if you shuffle the deck, you can, get them in a different order and stuff like that. So you could easily replay this. Well, we've been playing it for 10 years. So it's I would say it's not infinitely replayable, but it is in the sense that just play it until you get bored.
Right.
That's kind of it. And I think the combat's probably the one where you'll get bored of most quickly. But you can then there's about 120 enemies included, so 25 unique enemies and 5 copies of each, and you can just mix and match whatever you like after that. As you become familiar with the game, it's like, right, okay, so there's not an encounter that puts these ones together. I'll do that and just create a new one.
Now in D&D, there's a character sheet so that you can record your statistics, your experience, any money or anything that you loot along the way. What does that look like in Storyteller?
It looks almost identical to a really basic version of the D&D one.
Does it? Okay.
It does. It's almost like I was doing that on purpose.
Look at that.
So the idea was to kind of breed familiarity with people who've looked at D&D and go, man, this is just too much. But this looks just like the right level of stuff for me to get to grips with. The character sheet is basically, so there's a free download on the website, and there always will be. So long as I've got the money to pay for the domain, it will remain there. There's like an A4 version, so that's easier to print out for people at home. There's also like a square version if you want to replicate what comes in the box. And basically it's a table, dead simple, black and white, because again, I'm thinking more people printing it at home. Rather than over-designing this thing that can be color and all that, it was just, let's make it nice and simple and straightforward. So it's like, there's a name, there's a race, but you can be whatever you want. And then most of them are pre-filled for you. And then there's a blank version as well. So it's just, you level up and you write down your stats, and that's kind of it. And there's a notes box if you find any items and things like that.
Is there so you're in D&D, there's like race and class and they all come with benefits and helpful things like that. In Storyteller, is there something that introduces that concept to new players? It's like if they choose one race over another, this race might have a +1 to strength versus another.
So I deliberately avoided that because it was all part of the discourse around Dungeons and Dragons' latest, I say not latest, update. They did an update kind of recently-ish within the last 2 or 3 years. And I think it was the Spelljammer stuff where they got called out for some racist kind of principles around some of the things that a character could do. And it was talking how they'd been enslaved and all that kind of, and it just got a little bit murky waters for them. And I thought, right, okay, take it away. It used to say human, elf, dwarf, and that was it. And then I just thought, no, people can choose, because people play D&D to be what they want, and they want to play like a fantasy. So we specifically put like in the rule book and on the website as well. So it's like, you can play as a giant space pickle if you want, just go for it. It doesn't matter. So, there's no hard and fast, like, you must be an elf to get +1 to this. Because I also don't want people to feel like if they want to do a damage dealing character, if you play D&D, you generally choose something like an elf or a drow or something that lends itself to those because of its racial abilities. And I just didn't want people tied to things that they didn't really like. Like, I don't like playing as an orc. I like playing as a human. Orcs make better fighters, but I like playing as a fighter. So I'd be penalized for choosing like a human fighter. So I thought, to hell with all that. We just do what you like.
Okay. I typically gravitate away from human. Like when I play in a role-playing game, I like to play something that doesn't look like me or act like me at all. But then, of course, it's me who's playing it, so it acts like me.
Yeah.
One of my favorite role-playing games is by Modifius is Star Trek Adventures. And, they've got all kind of outlines for statistics for the different races and aliens that you can play in the game, but then you can also create your own, and you can tailor your statistics as long as you can make a good case for it. Right. And it's not obscene. It's not like I get +100 intelligence or some obscene thing like that. But, so that's really interesting. And it seems like I'm listening to you. It really seems like not only is Storyteller a passion, you really are trying to, and I think you say it, a bridge to D&D. I know you called it the gateway drug to D&D, but it seems like for individuals who have never played D&D before, this is a great gateway into that world. And are there any other elements of Storyteller that you have used or introduced that would make players comfortable playing D&D later?
I think probably the biggest one is just the introduction of a different kind of dice. So
Okay,
a lot of people who look at D&D think like they've never seen a 20-sided dice before.
right.
And so that's where we introduce the element of a D20, which functionally does something very similar to how it works in D&D as well. So we have like this mechanic, we call it outclass. So rather than like roll to hit, it essentially does the same thing. So you have to roll a number to beat a number, and that's just it. But we've kind of simplified it so that it's called weapon skill. So if you roll into outclass, I would say I'm attacking an enemy. Enemy's got 18 weapon skill. I would have to roll 18 or higher, and then my attack succeeds. There's some attacks that don't need an outclass, so you can kind of get around that where there's slightly weaker attacks and stuff like that. So that kind of concept where you roll to hit is kind of included, but there's a bit more to it as well. But that kind of again could familiarize people, be like, oh, that works like D&D, because I've seen someone do it on YouTube I've listened to a podcast and I know that they roll 20-sided dice. That's very similar. I might get into that, and that's kind of where there's sort of elements of crossover, really. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for, is that people will look at it and go, yeah, D&D is too much, but this game looks perfect. And then they can go play D&D and do what they want. That's kind of the idea. I want to sit nice and neatly between where D&D is and where these really popular board games, like things like Wingspan, the stuff that's like awesome board games, but doesn't quite scratch the itch of the depth of a tabletop role-playing game. That's kind of where I just don't want to bother anybody. I just want to sit here right in the middle and say, hi, don't forget we're here. And that's kind of where we want to be.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's great. I'm just going to sit here, but don't forget about me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just if you want to play D&D but it's too scary, come on, just come over here. I'm getting images of a guy with a trench coat now. I'll be like, come and check out my game.
Yeah, come here, and check this out. I don't know why Allison was a pirate. Like, come
Yeah,
here.
pirates. I know some pirates. They're some of the best people I know.
So, what is to your mind, the strength of Storyteller that would bring a seasoned tabletop gamer to your game? Right?
So, what would bring a seasoned tabletop gamer to my game? I think probably the idea that again, everyone's got a friend in this space at least who's always been the forever DM. Like
Yeah.
it's me, because I'm the only person who knows how to DM, and it's kind of fast and loose anyway. Who cares? But it would be the case of like the forever DM amongst the group is that sitting and thinking, I've got some friends who I want to bring to D&D, but I don't want to be the DM more than once. I want to do it, show them how to play, and then they can do that for me, kind of thing. And so that would really be, I think, quite enticing, because they're still getting that fix of, you're leveling up and you're getting to play as a character, and it's really easy to teach. Where to be a good DM, I think you need at least, I would say, a good 6 months to a year of playing properly with a good DM as well.
Right.
And then some just basic life skills and social skills, which again, don't always come naturally to everybody. Certainly don't come naturally to me. This podcast is, I'm probably going to collapse after this, but it was so tough. So that's kind of the idea. It would certainly entice people who think that they don't want to be the forever DM anymore and they want to move on from that, but they can't really pass that baton to anybody. It would certainly entice them to come over and say, hey, friends, I'll DM for you once here, and then it's your turn. I want to be an adventurer. And that's kind of, I think, what would bring them over.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, how many times have I had conversations with friends who were like the forever DM, and they're like, I don't get to play anymore because so your game gives them that opportunity, and it gives them an opportunity to introduce an advanced concept like D&D or tabletop role playing to a completely new audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and lets them scratch that itch of being an adventurer and not a game. That's okay. I
I
just
think
thought
there's
about 5 people who need a copy of your game now. It's like,
There's a
okay.
lot of crossover as well. So with everything being written on cards, one of the elements I've added fairly recently in the last year was with the exploration encounters. Because there's only so much space on a card. You read from one and then you read like whatever choice they make. But then I've put like a storyteller's note. So one of them is set in like an abandoned ruin, but it's not exactly clear from one or two of the answers. You have to sort of get both to get the full picture. So I put a little note saying the storyteller may want to describe that this is an overgrown ruin of whatever. And so seasoned DMs will look at that and think, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to run with this. I'm going to pick it up and say, so you're in the interior of an old, castle that does this, and there's doors about, and there's ruins over here, and they might sort of fill out that space a little bit for the people who don't necessarily get that
Hmm.
quite as naturally as somebody who's played D&D. So again, there's elements that you could adjust. You might expand on some of the story content as well. So yeah, it's because most of the thinking is done because it's pre-written on a card. You've got a bit more space and a bit more breathing room to sort of think, right, okay, well, next time we encounter that, I'll do this. And you might make your own notes. And then I'm hoping that it kind of does breed into that little bit of, do you know what, why aren't we just then playing D&D? But the exploration to get there is really exciting for people.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for.
So that's great. That's a really great answer as well. So what about, okay, so in D&D, you're in this situation, this ruins, right? This overgrown, vines growing on the castle. There's doors here and there, like you just said. In D&D, the party can choose to go in door number 1 or 2, but you're limited. In Storyteller, you're a little bit more limited. How does that present itself situationally in the exploration phase? Like, what does that look like?
So it's kind of just you kind of just move on. So a lot of what you tend to find is the exploration encounter will say you come across this particular obstacle. How do you want to tackle it? It's either this or this. So
Okay.
you generally get like a choice. Some are a little bit more sort of riddle like. Some are red herrings on purpose to make you think one's better than the other. But generally, you make a choice and you move on. So it just says these are the results of your choice, and it describes kind of how that affects the world going forward. You might get a note for something to use somewhere else, and it's not particularly clear at that point. And it's kind of based off a little bit of, I don't know if you've played a game called Dark Souls. Like it's a
I'm
video
aware of
game.
the game, but I've not. It's also a board game too.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I've
Uh,
not played either version, but I know of it.
so fans of the series really like the world building and storytelling in that because it's very, very minimal.
Hmm.
So, but it leaves a lot to the imagination. And so
Okay.
again, that's where these little bits of information where it says, you go here and do this, and then there's this thing, and then there's a little note if you want to expand on it. But then you kind of start building these ideas in your head and think, oh, well, I wonder if this will tie into something later on. And it doesn't really do that bit for you. You kind of fill in the blanks however you want. And again, that breeds that creativity that will then be more useful for games like D&D.
Okay. What about how does the game hold up with different? Because one of the unifying things in D&D or any tabletop role playing game is a single storyteller, dungeon master, whatever, GM. But in your game, we could play where you're the storyteller this session. Next time I'll be the storyteller. We could switch roles. How does that affect the gameplay, or does it at all?
I suppose it can. You essentially would maybe know the answer to some of these once you play it multiple times.
Sure.
So in that regard, it's more again your tolerance for boredom. You're gonna, I think, encounter some of these a couple of times. If you were to play 10, 15, 20 times, you're gonna sort of come across the same ones. But if say you get the box on Christmas morning and you pack it and have a game, it's going to be a good year before you get to sort of like monthly play where you're going to think, I remember that one from the first time we played. So that you don't generally come across many of these things over and over again. So if you were to sort of switch for being the storyteller, say between sessions, so say I was the storyteller for the beginning and then you were the storyteller for the middle, you would basically, it's easy enough for you to just sit where I sat and play my character.
Okay. Okay. So here's some behind the scenes questions. I've been thinking
Mm.
about this the whole time we've been talking. Is there's a very, very specific audience for this game. What what challenges have you experienced in that regard, and how have you overcome them?
So in terms of like a specific audience, obviously it's a very
Right.
niche product. Like I say, we're trying to sit between one of the most popular, arguably, I should add, the
Sure.
most popular tabletop role playing game in existence, and then every other board game ever. And we're trying to fit neatly into that space. So it, I guess I don't think I have overcome that challenge yet, being totally truthful, because a lot of what we've done so far has just been about exposure. So try again with the Kickstarter being successful. What you don't see or maybe haven't seen is that actually we've tried twice before with no exposure. And so really that's all the last probably 5-6 years have been about, is setting up on Kickstarter, trying and failing, setting up again and going to the UK Games Expo, and then getting to a point where we thought we could maybe fund, but it's going to be dicey and it'll be right down to the last penny. Or do we rethink the strategy of getting the exposure? And so that's what we did. And that's kind of how we are trying to overcome the challenge. But I
Okay.
think realistically, it is just about getting the name out there. And I think we could be adjacent to D&D one day. I'm thinking 20 years' time when I'm old and grey and passing the baton to my son, who will then make it bigger than D&D. Come at me, Hasbro.
Yeah.
No, I don't want a legal battle yet.
Right. No, no, no.
But no, that's kind of what we're aiming for, is just really getting over it with the exposure.
Right. So 10 years is a long time to be working on and developing a game.
Yeah.
You're not alone. You're not the first designer to take a long time to work on a single idea game.
Yeah.
So this question may fall flat, maybe it won't. How easy was it for you to be vulnerable and put your game out there in terms of playtesting and receiving criticism of something that's a passion for you?
You might need to write that. I might need to write that down and just think that over. That's a brilliant question. So how easy in terms of receiving criticism?
Yeah.
I might need a minute to think. I mean, that is a fantastic question. So I'll start from where I am now. So where
Okay.
I am now, it's quite easy. A lot of people do give criticism and say, I would do it like this. And so I think there's a really broad answer to this question, and then there's more finesse. Yeah, to receive criticism now is quite easy, but it hasn't always been. What I think is important to define as a creator, and this is a message to any creators really, is that you need to learn to differentiate between what's opinion and what I would just prefer versus what's actually useful. So we get a lot of that where people in the space are very opinionated and say, I don't like this. It should work like this. A perfect example of this is actually the characters, the mage, the assassin, the fighter. The mage is really quick. They wear light armor and they magically enhance their own speed. That's kind of the backstory behind it. It's not written anywhere, but a lot of people expect the assassin to be faster. And it's like, okay, I get that. But for me, it's important that the mage and the assassin go first before the fighter because they're big and heavy and bulky. And so a lot of that has been, I think the assassin should be faster. And then I sit there and go, well, from a gameplay perspective, that doesn't work because they're wearing medium armor. And so you might be a class later down the line that does a similar job. But for now, the assassin's the medium speed, good damage, sits right in the middle. And so you have to figure out the differentiation between what somebody just doesn't like because it doesn't fit their preconceptions of what you expect
Right.
versus what's actually useful. So something that would be useful would be like, the reason why the assassin's speed being slow doesn't work is X, Y, and Z. So that's kind of been how I've differentiated. The criticism is like, I just don't like it. It just goes straight over my head, don't care. If you don't like it, then there's another million games out there for you.
Right. Yes.
Because that's what the world's all about, isn't it? Like if you don't like me as a person, well, there's millions more of us. Just find another 6 foot tall bearded weirdo. I'm sure it's not that hard. So yeah, just moving on from that, it's like yeah, that sort of stuff goes on my head. But when people, I think probably when I first started sharing it with individuals, I was probably in a very different level of maturity anyway as well. So the criticism probably fell at the time probably a little bit different. But now it's much more easy to deal with now. I've probably done it for so many years.
Right?
Like, your game sucks. Nah, it doesn't.
So what was in and I realize you've been at this for 10 years. What was the most helpful feedback, the most helpful piece of criticism that you received?
I think beyond the one we've already talked about with the numbers thing,
Yeah.
it was probably just to get rid of the grid that again briefly mentioned earlier. Was there was a fight grid where your positioning mattered, and that was right in like way early prototypes. We're talking like year one,
Hmm.
and it felt super clunky. And when I played with friends, they were like, "So does this skill mean I can use it across the board that way, or is it a dark? Can I shoot it in like an angle or what?" And so getting rid of that was just that then streamlined the whole process. And it really just made it so much easier to then start iterating on things because you didn't have to worry about the range of stuff. Things used to have a range of like 4 squares or 3 squares. And if you were going 3 squares diagonally, obviously that's longer than 3 squares forward. It was a friend who taught, again, a lot of my friends have played this. A friend who kind of just went, "No, this isn't working, mate." I was like, "Yeah, no, you're right. It just does it." And that was probably after 3 play tests. We thought, yeah, just scrap the idea.
Yeah. So you had mentioned early on it was difficult for you to be vulnerable to criticism, but you've been at it for
Yeah.
so long. Was there a moment in this process where the light came on, and was it a piece of feedback that you received where you were like, this, like you realized you could shrug it off and receive feedback in a
Yeah.
positive way and filter those things out to your mind? Do you recall?
I don't know if I do specifically. I think because in my day job, I deal with a lot of feedback and not necessarily criticism, but we have like monthly work reviews and things like that, and they help you be very introspective. And so I've been doing that for probably 6 or 7 years. So I think that lined up with maybe the first time we really sort of got people that wasn't myself playing it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it was a homemade prototype. And some people basically said there was one guy who just didn't really like that he lost. He got killed, and it's because his mate who was playing did a terrible job. And so that was the first time where I really thought, all right, calm down.
Right.
This isn't feedback. This is just you're angry that you lost. And but I do remember taking that a little bit to heart and thinking, that game isn't rubbish. I've had loads of people play it and they really enjoy it. You just don't like the fact that you've lost. And that kind of was just, so if I remember correctly, I hope I don't identify him by saying this because he's a good friend. His friend, who I didn't know at all, was playing the fighter. Now,
Mhm.
the fighter's designed to take loads of hits and basically, be the tank of the group and say, come on, hit me, because I've got all the HP, right? And I think he was playing as the mage. Well, it was one of the other ones anyway. And his mate, who was playing the fighter, just kept attacking stuff and didn't use his defensive skills at all. And so the mage just kept dying. And he's like, well, that shouldn't be allowed to happen. I was like, well, it's not if your friend plays the game properly. So that's going back to one of your questions earlier. It's like you can't sort of budget, I guess, is the best word I can think of. You can't really anticipate is the word I'm looking for. Sorry.
Right.
You can't really anticipate for people not playing the game as you designed it when people can do whatever they want. So he's just hitting this totally useless skill over and over again and not using anything else, just the same thing. But he was laughing the whole time, be like, I'm not doing anything else. This is my character. It's what my character would do. And so I think that was probably the first time that I can think of that I would identify that as being like, he was really unhappy at losing, but at the time I was like, he thinks my game's rubbish. I don't like
Mm.
this feeling at all.
Right. Let me ask you about the community of game designers and publishers. So you had mentioned that you had a failed attempt on Kickstarter, and then you came back and you went to UKGE, right? And presented there. So, you've got a lot of experience. Talk to me about the community of designers. What kind of feedback did you get? Was it welcoming? Did you have any challenges or obstacles or anything of that nature?
So it's probably quite a tricky one to answer in all honesty, because I'm not particularly involved in, say, the community of game designers. However, we are quite close with a few specific game designers. And I think that's more a reflection on me. I'm very much like, I don't have lots and lots of friends that I kind of flit to and from. I have a very, very close group of friends. And so I think that's kind of how I've approached the game design group, really. Not on purpose, it's just naturally me. And so we've made really good and strong connections with, say, 3 or 4 different game designers. And they've been so helpful, like really helpful. One guy helped me set up the original adverts that I ran on Facebook about a year ago. And he was just like, because it's not taking away anything from him. He's got the experience that I need. And so he just felt really like obliged to help because he could. And so I'm approaching things in a similar way myself. We're part of a group on Instagram that essentially is just full of game designers. I've only recently joined it about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so anything that we're talking about in there is like, this is my experience with this. This is my experience with this. Here's how I run ads to get Kickstarter traffic. Here's how I would do this differently. And so I shared my current experience with everybody in there and said, look, this, because the campaign is funded and done well, but I've identified so many places that it could have just done so much better. And so I just shared that because other people are doing the same. So because we're all in it together, we all want to make a fantastic game, whether I'm making mine or somebody's making their own. It's about sharing and kind of paying it forward. I've been given a kindness by a few sort of, at the time, total strangers. So we basically got involved with lots of different game designers at UKGE, and then had some really great conversations off the back of that. And from there, it kind of moved into different groups and stuff who then again, it's just everyone's kind of quite helpful that we have come across. You would think that in a way, people don't really want to be helpful because you are technically competition, aren't you?
Yeah, technically, but
Well, I think because a lot of the things that I do, I talk about like the mission is just to create a nice cooperative space for people. Because I talk about that, I wonder if people are just more obliged to help each other just by me saying, well, I want to help you. You go help someone else. Kind of what you want to do, then go for it.
yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, because I've asked a lot of designers this question. You did a launch, you had an attempt on Kickstarter, and you're back at Kickstarter. My question is, it's twofold, actually. Was there ever a moment where you decided, you know what, I'm not going to self-publish this. I'm going to try and pitch this to a publisher. And the second part of that question is, why didn't you decide to try to pitch it to a publisher rather than self-publish?
That's a good question. In terms of the really simple answer is just because I want to stay in control of it.
Okay.
And I think part of that comes down to the fact that I've seen too many, mostly video games, because that's kind of where my background's from. Mostly video games where it's a tiny little studio, they make something amazing, a big company comes and buys them and spoils it over like several years. And that's happened with a lot of games. And so really what I want to do is just maintain control over what I've spent so long doing. And then just don't want people to spoil it for me.
Right.
If I'm going to spoil it, I want to do it myself.
That's fantastic. That is. So I have a completely off the wall question for you. And I'm hoping you understand why I ask you this question. What are jacket potatoes?
What are jacket potatoes? They're
Yeah,
potatoes with the skin still on. That's
that
it.
that
Yeah. Just do you actually not know, or am I getting a loaded question here?
no. Loaded
I
potatoes.
see what I did there.
No. Okay. I have no idea. That is not a term that we use in the United States, but our good friends Craig and Becky from Get Into the Games on Air, where your intro, you were featured
Yeah,
this week. Craig went on a rant, as he often does,
he did.
about jacket potatoes, and I'm trying to skip to the good part.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I'm thinking, what are jacket potatoes?
Do you
And
really
I'm
not?
trying,
So you must have an equivalent in the US.
well, if you're talking about a potato that's still got the skin on and it's baked in the oven, we call that a baked potato.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
But what
Yeah.
I was thinking was hash browns, which are shredded potatoes, which could have
Yeah.
the skin or not. Okay, so there you go. Thanks, guys, for
It's just a
sticking
baked
with me
potato.
on that. A baked potato, but if you go to the UK, it's a jacket potato,
Yeah.
and Craig will tell you all about it. Oh my gosh. I was like, okay, I had to figure out how to get that question in because I was watching their episode and I'm like, oh my God, I got to ask him what jacket potatoes are.
Yeah.
And Craig will get a kick when he listens to this. Oh man. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining. This is great. I'm kind of excited about the game. Like I said, I'm thinking about people here in my local community. And most of them they're always the game master.
Yeah.
And
That'd
I'm
be
like, man,
awesome.
this could be a great way to get more people into D&D. So this is an incredible story, an incredible product. So tell everyone where they can find you on all the socials and about the Kickstarter. You did say it is funded, yes?
It's funded, yes. So we're live with 21, well, at the time we're talking, 21 days to go. And it's Storyteller, March of the Damned. And it is live on Kickstarter now. We're fully funded. We're getting towards very, very close to our first stretch goal, which is, I've kept them quite realistic and quite sensible, but also there's more stuff. So the more money we get, the more I can pay the manufacturer to make more game and put more stuff in the box. That's kind of how it works. So the first upgrade is just components all across the board, nice new finishes and things like that. So we're really close to that one, which I'm excited for because I've only ever done it with the very basic finishes for my prototypes that I've got from them. So I'd be quite excited I'd order another set of prototypes with these finishes on and then see what they all look like. So really excited about that. But then in terms of socials, it's just either at Storyteller Game or at Storyteller Board Game. Wherever you look for me, if you type in Storyteller Game, you'll probably find us.
All right. Fantastic. So be sure to look out for that. Guys, the question for you this week, post them in the comments below when watching. Is there a game or a design idea that you have been thinking about or working on for many years and you just haven't decided to try to pitch it or publish it? Let us know. Let us know if you got a game idea and, maybe we can help you out and get the juices flowing there. Always be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. You can find us on Spotify and Apple and Deezer. And I've got a new website, meeple2meeple.riverside.com. So you could go and catch all the episodes of the podcast there. And of course, YouTube as well. And as always, be kind to each other and let's play more games.